San Antonio de Bayar, March the 19th, 1840. A delegation of Pennateca Comanche rides into the main plaza under a flag of truce. Chiefs in paint and trade cloth, warriors, women, children, a small herd of horses driven ahead of them. They have come to talk peace. Onlookers crowd the plaza to watch Comanche boys shoot coins out of the air with toy bows. Within the hour, this plaza will be a killing ground, and the fire that starts here will run clear to the Gulf of Mexico and back. 3 battles, 5 months, 1 year. This is the story of 1840, the year the Comanche came down. Welcome back to the Western Ledger. I'm Lamar. On this channel, we follow the Texas frontier through the documents that survived it, and we tell you where the record runs thin. Today's episode covers 3 linked clashes of 1840, the Council House fight, the Great Raid, and the Battle of Plum Creek, where the sources disagree, and on this story they disagree a great deal. We will stop and say so. If that is your kind of history, subscribe and ride with us. By 1840, the Pennateca, the southernmost band of the Comanche, were a people under pressure. Smallpox had swept their camps. To the north, the Cheyenne and Arapaho pressed on their hunting grounds, and to the south and east, a new republic had turned hostile. Texas had changed its mind about them. Under Sam Houston, the policy had leaned toward accommodation. His successor, Mirabeau Lamar, wanted the tribes gone from Texas altogether, and he funded rangers to make it so. Squeezed on every side, several Pennateca leaders decided the moment had come to make peace. In January, Comanche emissaries rode into San Antonio and asked for a parley. Colonel Henry Carnes heard them out and set one condition: bring in the captives, all of them. The chiefs agreed to return in a matter of weeks with their prisoners and rode out. Here's the misunderstanding that would kill people. The Texans spoke to the Comanche as if they were a single nation with a single voice. They were not. The Comanche were many independent bands, and no chief could command the captives held by another band's fires. What the Texans would read as bad faith was, in part, the government demanding something the men across the table had no power to deliver. And the Texans came ready for that failure. Secretary of War Albert Sidney Johnston had ordered the San Antonio officials to seize the delegation as hostages if every captive was not produced. Commissioners Hugh McLeod and William Cook took their places. Companies of soldiers, roughly 175 men, were positioned within call. On the 19th of March, the Pennateca returned, some 65 people in all, led by a chief the sources render as Muguara or Mukwaru, and they brought exactly 1 Anglo captive, a girl named Matilda Lockhart, along with a few Mexican children. 1 captive, where the Texans expected more than a dozen. Both sides walked into the council house, already certain the other had broken faith. The talks opened in a 1-story stone building on the main plaza across from the cathedral. The commissioners sat on a raised platform. The 12 chiefs sat on the packed earthen floor. Everything passed through an interpreter, himself once a Comanche captive. The commissioners reminded the chiefs of their promise, all the captives. Muguar answered that the others were held by bands beyond his authority, and by the accounts that come down to us, asked the Texans with some defiance how they liked that answer. They did not like it. Soldiers filed into the room. Through the interpreter, the commissioners delivered the ultimatum. The chiefs were now hostages, held until every captive was returned. The interpreter, it is said, first refused to translate it, warned that it would start a fight, and then spoke the words and bolted for the door. What followed was chaos in a closed room. The chiefs drew weapons, soldiers opened fire, the fighting spilled out of the council house and into the plaza and the streets beyond. When it ended, roughly 30 to 35 Comanche were dead, the 12 chiefs among them, along with several women and children. 7 Texans were killed and more wounded. Some 27 to 30 Comanche, mostly women and children, were taken prisoner. 1 Comanche woman was released to carry a demand back to the camps. return the captives, and your people will be returned to you. Now, the girl. Matilda Lockhart is the reason many Texans present felt no guilt at all. The most vivid account of her condition comes from Mary Maverick, who watched the delegation arrive. Her head, face, and arms were full of bruises and sores. Maverick wrote that the girl's nose had been burned away, that she bore the marks of long abuse. That account hardened Texan hearts on the spot, and it has shaped the story ever since. One more honest word about what to call this. You will see it written as the Council House Fight and as the Council House Massacre. Where you land depends on what you weigh. A peace delegation carrying women and children under a truce was killed, which is why many call it a massacre. Others hold that a botched hostage-taking erupted into a fight neither side fully chose. We will lay out the facts and let you decide which word you can defend. Whatever you call it, the answer came fast. As word reached the Comanche camps, most of the remaining Anglo captives were killed, and a war chief who had not been in that room began to gather the largest raid the Texas coast had ever seen. His name comes down to us as Buffalo Hump, an English stand-in for a Comanche name, Potsanaqua-hip, whose meaning the old sources render only vaguely and politely. He had not been at the council house. That is precisely why he survived to answer for it. Through the spring and summer, he sent runners to the other bands. What he assembled was extraordinary. Most accounts put the fighting strength at 400 to 500 warriors. With the families who came along to carry plunder, the whole column may have numbered near 1,000. Some Kiowa rode with them. Frightened witnesses would put the numbers higher still, so treat any single figure with caution. On the 6th of August, the column came down the Guadalupe Valley and struck Victoria. They killed people caught in the open, swept up something like 1,500 horses, and rode through the streets. The town held. A dozen or so citizens forded up in Placido Benavidez's stone house and survived, but the dead lay scattered around it. Then they turned for the coast for a prize no Comanche raid had ever taken, a seaport. On the 8th, they surrounded Linnville, the second largest port in the Republic of Texas. The townspeople did the one thing Plains raiders had no answer for. They ran to the water, crowded into boats and onto a schooner anchored in the bay, and pushed off. From the safety of the water, they watched their town die for an entire day, unable to do anything but curse. And what a strange day it was. The warehouses of Linnville held goods worth some $300,000, much of it bound for the merchants of San Antonio. The Comanche took it all. Witnesses describe warriors draped in stolen top hats and ribbons, feather beds and bolts of cloth tied to their horses, and dragged through the streets. For sport, cattle penned and slaughtered, the buildings burning. And the human cost was real, too. A customs officer named Hugh Watts went back for a gold watch and was killed for the delay. His bride of 3 weeks, Juliet, was carried off. Hold on to her name. She comes back at Plum Creek. One more figure waded into this scene almost literally. A local judge named John Hayes, no relation to the young ranger this channel usually follows, grabbed a gun, splashed out into the surf, and roared at the raiders. They left him alone, apparently deciding he was mad. He later discovered his pistol had been unloaded the whole time. Then the enormous column turned north for the plains, slow and heavy with everything it had taken. And that slowness, the mules, the horse herds, the loot, the captives, was about to cost them dearly. Word had gone out across Texas, and this time the settlements had days to gather. Volunteers came in from Gonzales under Matthew Caldwell. Old Paint, they called him. From Bastrop came Ed Burleson with his company. Ranger companies rode under Ben McCulloch, and Tonkawa allies came on foot under their chief Placido. old enemies of the Comanche and willing scouts. On the 12th of August, near present-day Lockhart, at a place called Goods Crossing on Plum Creek, the Texans caught the column. General Felix Houston took overall command, and that decision has been argued about ever since. Houston was a militia general, not a plains fighter, and his caution at the outset may have given the Comanche time to organize their retreat. He formed his men into wings under Burleson and Caldwell and pressed the attack. The Comanche, chained to their mules and captives, could not simply vanish the way they usually did. Rifle fire from cover broke their mounted line. The Rangers charged in with revolvers. It became a running fight over some 15 miles, the great horse herd stampeding across the prairie, and most of the stolen plunder was recovered by the end of it.
As the line broke, warriors turned on their prisoners. Juliet Watts, the bride from Linnville, was struck by an arrow that caught the steel stay of her corset and spared her life. She was freed on the field and lived. Plum Creek did not destroy the Penitica, but it closed the door. The Comanche never again drove all the way to the Gulf, never again sacked a Texas town. Buffalo Hump kept raiding, made a wary peace with Sam Houston in 1844, and signed a treaty at Council Springs 2 years later. And the young ranger at the edge of this story would spend the next 4 years turning what he saw in 1840 into the tactics that made his name at Walker's Creek. I'm Lamar. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the Western Ledger.